Let's pray. Lord God, as we gather here this morning from all our different places, we give thanks for this opportunity to be in the same space, albeit a cyberspace. As we come to think about what might lie ahead with regards housing and what might happen in retirement, whenever that might be, we just give thanks for Hazel and Marianne for their presence with us this morning so that they can help us think through some of the issues and discussion topics we have for this morning. Lord, be with us, guide us and support us as always. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Shura. Well, we're going to keep our eye on who else is coming in, but it's great to see folks, and we're delighted that we've got Hazel Bett from Housing and Loan, who's going to speak to us a little bit about what the Housing and Loan have and the ways in which they can support ministers and others in their approach to the next phase of ministry, whatever that might mean in retirement. Somebody did once say to me that still having kind of 25 odd years left, maybe even 30 if you look at the dates, that I'll be retiring when I'm 442 from the Church of Scotland, because there are only going to be 9 of us left by that time. So it'll be good. So I'm excited to hear about what support they can have, and I think Housing and Loan were keen just to share some of the things that they hear most commonly about ministers who perhaps have some misunderstanding about what the fund can do and how the fund might help. So I'm just going to invite somebody else in. If you haven't got your name on if you haven't got your name on your little tag at the bottom, if it says, iPhone or something like that, if you can change that to your name, just as we do in all these things, just so we know who's here for when it comes to questions. It's much easier to ask for Jonathan than it is iPhone. So if you are able to do that. So we're going to hand over to Hazel. There's a couple of questions that she wants to ask to start with going into the presentation, and we'll tell you how to do that as part of a poll, and then we'll have a time for questions at the end. So Hazel, welcome. Thank you for spending time with us in Housing and Loan, and I'll let you take over and introduce yourself and what you want to share with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for coming along to join us today. I should apologise to begin with for presenting myself on what might be my only YouTube appearance ever with a 6-month-old haircut. So I'm sorry about that, but hey, we all know what's been happening for the last few months, and we're just grateful to have a chance to speak to you about what the Housing and Loan Fund can do. Our chair, Marianne, is also attending today in the background, and I'm sure she'll chip in at the end if there are questions that it'd be helpful for her to answer. If you fall asleep during the course of this, then don't worry too much. The gist of it is that we want to say the Housing and Loan Fund can help people, both in terms of when they retire and after the point at when they retire. This is not just something that you can access at a single point in time and then you've missed the boat and there's no chance to go back. We also can help widows, widowers and bereaved civil partners, and we can help in situations where there is a dissolution of a couple. The Faith Nurture Forum, the pastoral care team there, refer people to us, and when there's an irretrievable breakdown of a relationship, then we can also help to spouse the party who is moving out of the manse, usually for a few years at least until they can get themselves back on their feet. So supposing you hear nothing else today, then hear that we want to speak to you both as individuals. If you want to investigate what we can maybe do for you, please get in touch. That's why I'm here. And also if you want ever to have a presentation to a gathering or a small group, then we'd be delighted to do that. So just a little bit more about me. Some of you will know lots about the Housing and Loan Fund. Some of you will know very little because you maybe haven't turned to thoughts of retirement or other things like that yet. but my predecessor, Lynn McMillan, will be known to many of you because she did this job for 16 years. And the fund is in really great shape thanks to Lynn and all the other trustees who have participated in this fund over the last 51 years now. And so it's a lovely thing to be involved with. It's a really positive thing that we can do, and I'm really grateful to have this position and to tell you a wee bit more about it. My background is as a property solicitor for half a century. 23 years I was a residential property solicitor, and I was 7 years with Citizens Advice. So it's been helpful for me coming into this job to know a bit about housing and the property market and the extremes of pressure that people can be under when they're actually looking to solve a housing problem and during the course of a move. They have always said that house moves are one of the most stressful experiences that people can have in life. So I'm very mindful of that. So let me just share the PowerPoint presentation with you. So although we are snappily called the Housing and Loan Fund, there is a more extended proper name, which is the Housing and Loan Fund for retired ministers and widows of ministers. But for tongue-tie reasons, it's helpful just to call us the Housing and Loan Fund. As I've said, we've been around for a long time. It was established in 1969 with £100,000 from these worthy sources, and was obviously in recognition of difficulties that ministers faced at the point of retirement and their widows faced when suddenly there was no manse at the end of the day available for them for their continued accommodation. So that's how it all started, and this is how it operates. We have got 11 trustees who meet 5 times a year. It's a mixture of ministers and other people in that. There's property people, accountants, GPs, but I think they all find it a fairly positive experience because it's a nice thing to participate in, because they can do good and they can provide a positive outcome for people in doing that, and they take their duties very seriously and are very keen to help wherever we can possibly help, and wherever they can exercise their discretion to help, then they're keen to do that. Obviously, it operates on a strictly confidential basis, and that applies obviously for the trustees and the staff in the office. There are 3 of us, usually based at 121, but obviously at the moment out in our own living rooms and wherever we're currently operating from. There's myself. I deal mainly with the applications and with the business of the board and help in the initial stages of purchases, and have a little bit more to do with the loans. The real powerhouse of the whole organisation is our wonderful property manager, Hilary, who has been around forever and knows everything about everything to do with housing and loan mercifully, and she manages over 200 properties across the whole of Scotland, and pretty much everything that I can do she can do as well. So if I'm ever not here, then Hilary will be able to help you, and our support assistant who keeps the show running in terms of keeping all the bills paid, all the safety checks up to date, all the maintenance going with the tenanted properties that we have, John Lunn. So it's a very small group, and 2 of us are part-time, so we're pretty streamlined. And at the moment, John's been furloughed, so Hilary and I have managed to keep going remotely. We're now in a really healthy financial position. That £100,000 has been well spent and well managed over the years. And I just want to say that early on, a few people have asked me if the Housing Loan Fund is still okay. Will they still be able to get their house that they've been promised, or the loan that they've been promised, because they've seen things in the press about the challenges that the church faces in terms of its finances. But we're in very good financial health at the moment, and there's absolutely no difficulty as far as we can see in continuing to offer this, and we hope to be able to offer this for as long as ministers need this service. So please don't worry if we've run out of money. We absolutely haven't. And the money that we have is ring-fenced for us, and we will be able to provide housing going forward. So essentially what we do is we either provide people with a house to rent, and so currently we've got 203 houses all over Scotland. I mean, all over Scotland, really everywhere. So Hilary's got to manage places north and south and everywhere in between, and a couple of islands as well. We've also got over £6 million out currently on loans where people have been assisted in buying their own house. So essentially that's the two main types of help that the fund can offer. We can either offer a house to rent, or we can offer help with a loan in your own purchase. The categories of people who are eligible are broadly as follows, but again I would say if you're in any doubt, there's absolutely no harm in asking, so just phone and have a word with us, and I'll give you details at the end of our guidance notes where you can have a look at the details. But essentially, if you have got the status of a minister and you're in receipt of a pension from one of the church schemes, then you're going to be eligible to apply. There's usually a minimum of 10 years service, but obviously if people are ill and have to retire early, then that's a situation that we'll look at, and we work closely with, again, the pastoral support team in Faith Nurture on those cases. Widows, widowers, bereaved civil partners, and again in conjunction with the Faith Nurture Forum pastoral team, separated and divorced spouses and separated civil partners of ministers. These are all categories of people that we would be eligible for help from the fund. This is quite a helpful visual. I think I'll just give you a minute to sort of take this in, because it shows what the current financial parameters are. And by financial parameters, I'm talking about capital. So if the capital in your household, if there's a couple, the couple's finances, or a single person, if your capital is less than 105,500, then what you would be likely to be offered from the fund is a house to rent. And if your personal resources at the moment are over 105,500 and up to 230,000, then you're likely to be offered help with a loan to buy. If you've got more than £230,000 capital, then congratulations, we think you're probably going to be okay by yourself. But we can, even beyond the 230,000, we can offer bridging loans in limited circumstances. Now, that limited circumstances are closed bridging. If you know about bridging from days of old, you'll know that it was quite commonly used when people had maybe wanted to buy and their dates weren't quite matching and their sale was happening later, or situations where somebody needs to buy but their lump sum from their pensions, for example, is not yet available, and it's not going to be available for a few months. We can help in situations like that. But many of the situations where we would be able to help, and because it involves having an already concluded or legally binding contract on a sale, unfortunately, because the Scottish system has become very much more like the English system, the ability to make use of bridging loans has diminished. But it can be used in limited circumstances, and again, please speak to us about that. We always set, each year there's a maximum price that we will help with. So it's the same for rental and for loans, and it's currently set at £185,000. And we're looking generally to what the average sale price in Scotland is when we're, and any other information we can bring to bear when we're looking to set the limit. So that means that if you're hoping to buy somewhere for £250,000, then irrespective of what your capital is, we would say that we're not going to be able to assist. If you already own a property, and many of you do, then we don't allow people to continue to own a property and get help from the fund. But obviously the property that you have might just be part of your capital assets, and it might not be a particularly valuable property. You might find that you're wanting to sell that and put that into your capital pot and then get your property for retirement. And so we can help if you're planning to sell your property and put that into your capital pot, we can still help. And obviously the same applies in terms of bridging being available irrespective of your situation. So the financial parameters in terms of the price, the kind of capital ranges, and another figure that I'll share with you in a little minute, they're reviewed every year. So don't just ask once. You might have consulted with us a couple of years ago and found that you fell just outside the barriers. Ask again. I'm really not awash with phone calls. I've got a lot of scope to take a lot more inquiries, and I'd be delighted to speak to people if they want to just make that inquiry. So house to rent, we've got more houses rented than we have loans out. It's almost 2 to 1. So it's a huge part of what we do, and Hilary, as I say, deals with most of this single-handedly. If your finances are below the current limit, which is 105,500, you're likely to be offered a house to rent. And the rent that we would charge you would be 50% of the market rate. For widows and widowers, bereaved civil partners, it would go down to 25% to match the fact that the pension that you would receive would go down at that point. We can only provide houses in Scotland. There are practical reasons for that. It's difficult to manage a portfolio like this across even just Scotland, and it would be difficult with legal differences to manage properties in England too. So it's just in Scotland. And the fund at all times has got some vacant properties, not because we keep them in case somebody needs them, because when something's free, we generally get it on the market as quickly as possible to sell. But at the point when somebody is offered a rental property, we'll show them what we've got at that time. And if that happens to be in the right area for them and it happens to suit them, then they'll be asked to consider those houses. We do set certain criteria for what we're asking you to look for. It's normally 3 bedrooms, 2 reception. And if you're planning to run a business from home once you retire, you better speak to us about that, because that might not fall within our criteria. If you are looking at the point of retirement, then please try to future-proof yourself and avoid having to give yourself the stress of a move later on. And so we suggest you're looking for somewhere with good facilities and links and nothing too remote. And we'd like it to be in move-in condition. If a survey's got lots of issues, then we're likely to turn somewhere down unless there are things that can be easily fixed within budget. And we're not keen on listed buildings because they just present us with a terrible maintenance challenge right from the get-go. In terms of loans, the loans that we give are interest only, so there's absolutely no requirement to pay the capital until the house is sold for any reason, or if your personal or financial circumstances change significantly, then you might want to buy the house, or outright pay off your loan, you know, whatever. So it's for an infinite period, really, which is very rare. It's not for a fixed term, it's for as long as you need that interest-only loan. And it's either a straightforward interest-only loan if it's up to £25,000, or between 25, and again, a figure that changes because it's up to 70% of the maximum price. Currently 129,500 is our highest figure for a shared appreciation loan. So just a moment on shared appreciation loans. The fund share in any increase in the value of the property in the same proportions as they have a loan to what you have capital. So say when the house is sold, it's made £10,000 profit from when it was bought. And say our loan represents 50% of the purchase price originally, then we would require at the end to be paid back not only our loan, but 50% of the profit. So we'd get £5,000 into the fund at that point. We can give loans in any part of the UK because that's a bit more straightforward than maintenance. So we can give loans anywhere in the UK and up to 12 months before retirement date. And there is a retained capital figure, which is the other figure that we review every year. And we are expecting that people, and we insist in fact that borrowers retain £50,000 from their capital and don't blow it all on the house right at that point in time. So that's trying to just ensure that people have got enough money for a new car, roof repair, wee holiday here and there, and anything else that they will hopefully need to do. So just a few more slides, a couple of really simple examples. This is a minister with a little amount of capital, just £500 in their savings account and a small lump sum. And this person here is retiring next year, so within a year. So if that application goes to the trustees and all the other criteria are fulfilled, they're likely to be offered a house to rent. They would be asked to consider the existing vacant properties that we've got, but if they're not suitable, we'd ask them to go looking for a property. We don't find them a property, we effectively ask you to go house hunting. And then we'll talk you through the steps of that and we'll deal with the purchase. Once you've found it and we've secured the property by offering for it, then we'll deal with that purchase with the help from the really great team that we've got in the church law department. But we'll aim for an entry date at the point at which we pay for it and become owners of that house. We're aiming for that to be not more than a couple of months usually before your retirement. Ideally, we'll discuss a strategy with everybody about how soon to start looking, because it's a bit tricky that people who are looking to sell might be looking for a really quick sale. And so to start looking 7 months out, we can't really sustain supporting an empty property for 6 months. But people might be looking to sell, but might be looking for a really long entry date. Usually sellers are looking for between 1 month and 3 months. So we'll discuss a strategy with everybody who's looking to buy. And this is another example. This is somebody who's in a couple and there's a bit more capital available. And you'll also see that this is June 2024. So that's a wee bit further out. So this minister and spouse have got 180,000 between them. So back to that figure of retained capital, the trustees would ask that they definitely keep £50,000. So that means we're asking them to put £130,000 of their own money towards any price. So that means if our maximum purchase price is 185, then the maximum loan that we would offer them would be £55,000. And that's going to be a shared depreciation loan. Just give you a minute to think about that. We ask you to retain 50,000, put the balance of your funds towards the purchase price, and then we'll give you a loan for the difference. Now, because this couple are not buying until 2024, we will give them a firm promise of that loan at this point, but it's subject to a financial update within a year of their retiral. So they are given a promise of help from the fund, but we do ask them to review their application within a year, and then we'll just update the figures. And this minister and spouse will need their own solicitor to do the purchase. The church doesn't do the purchase for them. We're essentially lenders in that situation, so they'll need their own solicitor at that point, and we'll liaise with them. So just a few final thoughts. It's a difficult thing, but it is generally expected that a minister will move out of the parish at the point of retiral. And so when you're thinking about where you're going to live, that can obviously be really difficult. But if somebody's going to stay in the parish, then that's something that they and we need to speak to the presbytery about. On the flip side of that, even if you buy a house and you've got a house 6 months before your actual retirement date, you have to stay in the manse and keep working right until the very end, obviously. So you've got to stay in the manse till your date of retirement. We ask all beneficiaries to let us know if they win the pools or they enter into a new relationship with a millionaire, or you know, if their circumstances become much more challenging, then let us know about that, because it may be that we can offer further help, or it may be that at that point you do, if you're renting, want to buy your house or you want to pay some of your loan off. We can offer transfers from one house to another in some circumstances. So if people find that their health is deteriorated and they can't manage the stairs anymore, even though they really hope that they would be able to do that, or family circumstances have changed and they want to move to be closer to other family members, then we can look at applications like that, and indeed offer different types of further help beyond retirement. As I said, it's not just necessarily you've missed your boat if you haven't sought our help before the retirement point. And we can give further loans if people find that they're struggling financially, they haven't quite managed to make their money eke out. We can look at giving people further loans if they want to apply for a further advance. So if you do know anybody who might need our help, that might not just be you, but it might be somebody in your congregation. It might be somebody that you know who's an estranged spouse of a minister. Then don't hesitate, put them in touch with us and we can have a chat. And finally, just if you're thinking of retirement, I think a really helpful place to start is to get a state pension age check done yourself. You can do that easily online at this website, and same website you can ask for a state pension forecast. And for many people, what we see is that people are tying up their plans for their retirement, or their initial thoughts are that they're likely to retire at the point when they get their state pension. So that's a really easy thing for you to do, and you might want to just have a look at that sometime. Our guidance notes, which again are reviewed regularly, and we're actually in the process of reviewing at the minute, but they're available on the church website there, and my details are there at the end. So Brian, Jonathan, do we want to take the other poll questions now, or do we want to have open questions?
And if you can just put the recording back on just for us finishing. Obviously, if you do have any specific questions, then the best thing to do is contact Hazel, and Hazel's able to be contacted at hbett@churchofscotland.org.uk in the usual manner. But also, in particular, if you're here on the Zoominar or you're watching the recording, Hazel would be particularly pleased to hear on behalf of the trustees for just asking this question. If you don't believe that you would qualify for help from the fund after everything you've watched in terms of the financial limits and whatnot, what is the current barrier for you? And I think that will help them plan for the future and see where ministers are. And it would be really helpful if people could contact Hazel with that. So if you don't believe you'd qualify for the fund, what is that barrier for you at the moment? So Hazel, thank you for joining us, and thank you on behalf of ministers for the work that the Housing and Loan Fund does. And I would ask that you would take back thanks to the trustees for their commitment to ministers' well-being going forward. So thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And Jonathan's going to close for us now.